When you're afraid of losing time, I kind of am in this feeling or in this mood where it's like, you know, I'm in a place right now, or I'm feeling right now like this fear, but also this kind of like understanding of like life is really long and it takes time to get to where you want to be or to become something, anything really, because there are steps to take. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you're afraid of losing time, you probably are thinking of like being impatient or wanting things really quickly. But it's also like, had I started earlier, I could have been something else or something different. You know what I mean? Like, if I had started certain things at a younger age that I'm trying to do now, then maybe, like this podcast, for instance, like if I had started podcasting 10 years ago in 2015 when I was just a teenager, like, would my life be different? You know what I mean? Would anybody want to listen to my thoughts and opinions on things just because I had the podcast to begin with? Just like now, you know what I mean? Everybody has a podcast. Everybody's like, has a microphone, can speak into a microphone, can have like this show or this podcast and post it on YouTube or post it on like big platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. But does that mean that time was well spent? Was it worth it? And that's kind of like, when you're afraid of losing it, it's like I'm putting my work, my effort, my voice, my thoughts, my opinions, my feelings out there, and not that you necessarily expected a reward, but after some time it's kind of like, well, I've been doing this for so long, and now I kind of feel like I can't keep running or I can't keep operating without getting something back, or without like, just a little bit of some sort of support. You know what I'm saying? And the other day on my When Your Podcast YouTube channel, somebody commented on one of the videos on one of the episodes of my podcast, and I was like, that was the support I needed. Like, just that one comment alone kept me going, and I was like, all of my fears, all of my doubts, all of my like, I'm afraid of losing time, I'm afraid of losing another day of not getting a new fan or a new subscriber or a new listener, or my podcast isn't reaching out and attracting new fans the way I thought or would necessarily expect. So you end up feeling like a bit of disappointment. And it's like, well, to start over from scratch again is like, now you're also losing time again. You know what I mean? It's like I put so much into this thing right here, right now, that it's like I want a little bit of like, I want more of those moments where it's like that support. You know what I'm saying? But it's also like, when you're afraid of losing time, it can be like, imagine this scenario, okay? It takes like 12 years to become a doctor, and like maybe 8 years to become a lawyer. And imagine that on the 11th year or like the 7th year of being a doctor or a lawyer, you decide that like, this isn't for me anymore. You finally like open your eyes and you're kind of like, you know what? I don't really want this anymore. This isn't like the career for me anymore. I don't like this. But you're only 1 year away, right? You've already spent 7 years working towards your law degree. You already spent like 11 years trying to become a doctor. You know what I'm saying? And now it's like, finally you're at the point where it's like, okay, I can, like, you're almost at the finish line. You can see the finish line. It's right there. It's just 1 year away. Do you spend that last year doing something that like, hey, I accomplished it, I did it, I got it done, and now I can move on? Or do you let it go and just kind of go like, this isn't for me anymore, I don't want this anymore, let me walk away? And me, myself, and I kind of feel like, I would just stick it out. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what I've been taught to do. Like you don't, just like anything else, like I'd be lying if I said I always loved like going to school or doing certain things, right? But you have to do them and then you just push through it and then you get done with it, right? You move on afterwards, right? Once you graduate or you get your degree or whatever, right? It's like, okay, then the next part of your life begins. You can do whatever you want afterwards. But specifically with like careers like being a doctor or being a lawyer, it's like with those careers, it's like you have a high educational degree. Like you can get a job as a lawyer, you can get a job as a doctor, right? Like these are very, what's the right word? They're very these are long-lasting careers that have like a structure to them. You know what I mean? If you want to become a doctor, there's a structure to becoming a doctor. If you want to be a lawyer, there's a structure to becoming a lawyer. And, there's like a blueprint you can follow, just like with school or with college or with anything, right? Like in sports, there's like a clear path, you know what I mean? There's like if you want to go into football, well, this is what you have to do to play football. You go to college, you get good grades, you play college football, and then they'll think about drafting you to the NFL, and then you get drafted to the NFL, and then you play the game, and all of these different things, right? Like there's a blueprint for it, and I imagine there's a same blueprint kind of for becoming a doctor with varying degrees of fields. You know what I mean? You can obviously choose to practice whatever you want. You know what I mean? But for me, I just kind of look at it like on that last year, you have 1 year left of whatever it is you're going through. And I would just stick it out, even if I wasn't happy with it, even if I didn't really want it anymore, even if I knew that I was going to take a chance and do something else completely, I would probably not give up because I put so much time into it. It would feel like I was kind of cheating myself or taking something away from myself. And that's not to say that like becoming a doctor is like you have to do it 12 years nonstop, you know what I mean? I'm sure you can go 2 years and then I don't know, maybe take another 2 years off and then come back and then still be able to get your degree back and forth. I'm sure that's the case, but I'm just talking about it like if you know for a fact, like you did it 11 years straight. You know what I mean? I'm kind of just like putting it in the perspective of like consecutively, you have to do it all the way through. And if you back out, even just for a little bit, maybe you have to start at the bottom again, which isn't the case, but I'm just saying. But my point being is that like it's scary, and it's a fear. You get afraid that like I spent 11 years trying to become a doctor, and on that 11th year, I finally figured out that like this isn't what I want to do anymore, and I lost so much time thinking this is what I wanted, but what I actually want is to be this other thing. You know what I'm saying? It's like I don't want to be a doctor anymore. Now I realize that I want to be a real estate agent, or I want to be maybe an astronomer. Maybe I want to work as an engineer, or maybe you realize, actually, I'm really good at drawing. I want to go to art school, right? Like all of these different things in your mind. And you kind of just say to yourself, like, do I give up this one thing to pursue another so I don't lose any more time? Or have I already lost the time and should just stick with what I know? And that's kind of a feeling that I've been thinking about, is that like I've been trying at like so many different things, and time again I see that I failed, or I haven't continued to stay at it. You know what I mean? I haven't focused on being great at maybe one thing through and through. I've instead tried to juggle a bunch of different pieces, and now years later it's like, ugh, you know what I mean? It's kind of like this weird moment where it's like, ugh, do I give up these other things so I can focus on this one thing, or do I continue to juggle and see how things work out? And it's not so much a bad juggle, you know what I mean? It's not like I can do this podcast and multiple different things. Like, that's not a problem. It's just kind of like, how much can I realistically stack onto my plate without, you know, without feeling like it's a chore to like juggle it, or feel like a chore to balance everything, right? Keep everything on the plate. And that's just the kind of like the fear. That's what I'm afraid of, is that like, I'm afraid of wasting or like losing time because I don't know what I want. And I think I know what I want. But then once I get it, like, will I eventually change and try something else, something new? And then by then, is it like, well, you're too old to be this thing? You know what I mean? Like, so to speak. But what does that really even mean anymore? You know what I'm saying? Like, opening a business. You're never too old to open a business, right? But there's a difference between, I don't know, maybe you open a business when you're 60 years old, right? You turn 60 and you decide, I'm going to open my first business. And then there's like a 30-year-old guy that's like, I'm opening my first business too. You know what I mean? And then, or you see another 60-year-old guy who's been having a business for 20 years, 10 years, even a year before you. And you feel like, you know, that now that you're down at the bottom, you know, when you're starting out from scratch, it can kind of feel like, well, so to speak, it's kind of, it has that feeling of like, dang, like, I'm so late, I'm so behind, I'm so incapable of doing anything, that it's like, darn, I'm missing out, you know what I mean? Or I've missed so much time that it's like, now what do I do? You know what I'm saying? You ever see those like company establishment signs, or like when somebody has like a business and they put established 1928 or 1954 or 1972, right? Like, the longer that business has stayed around, the more and more value it holds, because it's like, hey, we've been here a long time. We've been doing what we do. We've been providing a great service, you know what I mean? Whether it's like a restaurant or a clothing store or a shoe company, right? Like, they have like an established business, you know what I'm saying? And when I think of people like now, like, if you opened a business in 2015, I wouldn't have thought much of that business back in 2015. I probably would have been like, whatever. But now that it's 2025, now it's like, man, they've been doing this for 10 years now, and I like kind of scoffed at it, but they're still making money, they're still making products, they're still doing things. Like, there's value in that company now that I didn't see before, or that I kind of like pushed away because it was like so new at the time, or it was like, who cares? It's like, you just opened a new business, I don't really, care all that much. And I feel that same way now with like, opening new businesses maybe last year in 2024, or opening a new business in 2025 right now. You know what I mean? I won't think too much of it. It's just like, yeah, he made it, and it puts established 2025 on a shirt. That's cute. That's nice. But like, who cares? You know what I mean? You just opened the business. Probably not the best thing for you to do that. But now, maybe in 2035, I'll look at it and be like, man, they're still going. You know what I'm saying? They're still doing what they want to do. And I don't know. I guess my biggest problem is that, like, I don't see tomorrow, or I'm not thinking about like years in the future. I'm thinking about like today, I'm thinking of right now. I'm thinking of like today in January 2025. You're not, where's the 10 year of growth? You know what I mean? There is none. You're starting from scratch, and you're a newbie, and you're just figuring it out. But come 2035, and you're still a business, you're still operating, you're still doing great things, you're still getting better and better and better. Now it's like, wow, you can really talk, you can really show that you can play the game. And that's the thing, right? Is that like with all of this podcasting and social media and like digital world, it's kind of hard to be like, well, it's hard to gauge or to look at everybody and be like, I want to be kind of where they're at, or I look at what they're doing and I'm like, I can do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just need X, Y, and Z without actually just like doing what you can with what you have. You know what I'm saying? Like looking at the big content creators or looking at the other podcasters and being like, I do a podcast too. I talk into a microphone. I talk about my thoughts and my feelings. I could interview that person or that person because they're really interesting. Like it's easy to entertain or to like talk to people who are interesting and that like you can prep for and that you can have conversations with. Like that's easy. The hard part is that like, can I by myself carry this whole thing and grow an audience to that level? And when you realize what it takes to grow the audience at that level, you kind of say to yourself like, and you don't see like a huge significant boost, or you don't see the support, like what I was talking about, like when I don't get that comment very often, you kind of get to this point of like, am I wasting my time? You know what I mean? That's why I'm afraid of losing time, is that like I'm putting the work in, but is it the right type of thing? You know what I mean? It's like it would be like what's the right thing? Kind of like building, like trying to build, it would be like building the biggest boat in the world in New York City, or like in where's a good place? Like you're building a huge boat in Idaho or like Iowa, right? And then you build this big boat, and then they're like, oh, that's great. How are we going to get it to the ocean? And you're like, oh, snap. I should have built it near the ocean so that way we could easily put it over there. Like, it's so big, we can't put it on a truck or on cars or planes, and it'll take like multiple helicopters, multiple hours. Like, how do we move it? Like, now it's just stuck here and it's not going to do what it's supposed to do. Like, this huge, gigantic boat can't do it anymore. And now you have to like, well, we're just going to have to rebuild it near water so that way we can make that one do what it's supposed to do. And now you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm an idiot. You know what I mean? It's like you just lost X amount of time because you put the work in, you built the boat, it's beautiful, it's amazing. You got it right down to the perfect style and the woodwork or whatever, you know what I mean? You got it right there. But now you have to move it to water. Now you have to get it on the water. And it just feels like, oh, I wasted the time. Like, I should have thought of that beforehand, or I should have known better to put it there. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I feel. It's like you're putting in the work, but it's not at the right place. It's not doing the right thing, so to speak. And so you kind of have to ask yourself that, like, what is this? What am I doing? What am I really trying for? And that's why you have to kind of say to yourself, like, if you're doing it so that you can be, like, rich and famous and all that other stuff, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And this podcast is really for, I guess, myself, my future self. And that's the long-term reward later on. You know what I mean? Later on down the line, when I re-listen to this when I'm, like, 70 or 80 years old, and hopefully I'll still be able to listen to it. You know what I mean? Fingers crossed, no hearing aids, but you know what I mean? Like, you get to that point or that age and it's like, now it'll be so much of it later on down the line, it's like it's a beautiful thing to be able to come back and to listen to this. It's kind of like a time capsule. And this will continue to be something that I'll look forward to, in the future. So making this for myself, but also like if it relates to somebody, if it makes somebody go like, hey, I really like that, that episode of the podcast, or that really related to how I feel in my situation, like that's comforting. That feels really good. And also if you make money, like that's not so bad either. If you can make a living at doing this. But all I'm trying to say is that like you're afraid of losing time, afraid of being this old person starting at something that's maybe like a young man's game or whatnot. You know what I mean? I often think about like how people are, comparison robs so much of your own perspective or your own life because you're so busy looking at what other people are doing and saying that like, darn it, like I should be out there. You know what I mean? Like there are people out there who are vacationing, you know what I mean, in the Bahamas or whatever. And you're just kind of like, I'm not vacationing in the Bahamas. I'm trying to survive this week. I'm trying to like make my rent payments. I'm going to work on a day-to-day basis, just trying to survive, just trying to make my, build up enough money so I can go on vacation, and maybe just so I can provide for my family, just so I can survive whatever's going on in my life right now. How do I do it? What can I do? And that robs you of everything, those comparisons, those kind of like, that feeling of like, man, they have it so good and I don't. What do I do? Can I even do anything? And that'll always take away something from you. But at the end of the day, it's all about like what you make your life, And this is what I want to make my life. I want to give my attention to this podcast. I want to give my voice and my opinions and my thoughts on this podcast, so that way when I look at it when I look back on this day, because I'm not going to get this day back, and I'm not going to get this second back, it's important that like as I get older, I can see it through a different perspective, and I can relive kind of these moments of like, hey, you had nothing to be afraid of. You're going to be just fine. You're putting in good work. You're being a good person. You're doing the right thing. You worrying about it or you being afraid about it isn't going to make it much better. But I understand how you feel, and hopefully my future version of myself can look back on this and kind of just say like, you're doing it. Everything that you dreamt about, the life that you wanted, the things that have always been in your mind, you're going to do just fine, And that fear, whether good or bad maybe, was probably the key to getting you where you are, to what you want to be, But I just can't get this thought out of my head of like, am I doing the right thing? Am I putting in the right work? Am I really being what I say I want to be, or am I just talking to a wall, So anyways, back to what I was talking about is like 7 years in being a lawyer. You have one more year till you completely become a lawyer. Like you sat through all the classes, you learned the law frontwards, backwards, left and right. You read every single book, every single case. You've done it all, right? 7 years, and you got one more year left. But you're kind of saying to yourself, this isn't what I want anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't I don't want this to be my career. But you've already put so much time into it. You feel like you have to finish it. You have to accomplish it, right? And then you can start the rest of tomorrow. But then you're never going to get that year back. So what do you choose? And obviously my choice would be finish the law degree, and you can always start anew, right? Like that would be my mentality, is that like, hey, it's one more year. You've already been through 7 years of this. One more year is nothing, and then you can start over. Then you can be fresh. Then you can do whatever you want. You know what I mean? But there's a little part of me that says, screw it. I don't want this anymore. I have to be free of this. I have to let it go. I have to walk away from it. And maybe one day I'll come back and finish it. But then that's a little scary. You know what I mean? It's a little scary to be like, yeah, I'll come back and finish it. So it's like, stick through it all the way through and look at it like I can always start over tomorrow, or go with the feeling of now, the feeling of I can't do this anymore. I don't want this anymore. Let me go where I feel is better. You know what I mean? And that could be any number of things. Just because, like, you could want to be a lawyer, but then the next thing you know, it's like, I actually just want to be like a camp ranger, or I want to be like work in the outdoors. How do you decide what you feel? You know what I mean? Nature's not going anywhere. But this law degree, you can just get it and finish it, and that'll be it. Right? That's the reasoning. That's the rationale. But can you really sit in that unhappy feeling for another year longer? Right? Who knows what might happen in this next year? You could, very well just be so depressed, so unhappy, so down on yourself that it's like you can feel like, I don't even want to be here anymore. I don't even want to do this anymore. You know what I mean? I should have taken that chance. I should have taken that risk and gone for what I was really feeling. So I guess it's really just a matter of inner strength and looking at the future as optimistically and as happily as you can. You know what I mean? So no matter what path you choose, you're always choosing what feels the best for you. And so that fear, that can you live with it? Can you live with being afraid of losing time? I say no. You don't have to live with it, but at least you know that there's a time when it's going to end, or there's going to be a moment when you can finally be at peace with yourself and accept the new changes in your life, right? Like, human beings adapt really quickly. You'd be surprised how quickly human beings can adapt. I think I said this before when I went to New York City. It was my first time being in the city, and I was so wowed by the buildings and the park, and everything was just a new experience to me. Everything was so crazy, so cool. And by the end of the trip, by the end of the time I was there, I had gotten so kind of used to it. I started taking the buildings for granted, and I was just like, yeah, it's a building. Let's move on. I want to go do this thing. I took the subway for granted because I was like, yeah, it's the subway. I've been here before. I have my ticket. I just go on there, and then I get up at the next stop, and then we go to the next place. Like, I was taking it all. I wasn't appreciating it anymore. It just became the normal. And I was like, I don't want to feel like that. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how, I don't know, that's maybe kind of how we feel about our lives, or the things that we have, the things that we don't appreciate enough, is that we stop looking at all the best things about it, and we start just treating it like normal. We start treating our rooms, our apartments, our houses like normal. We start treating our friends, our family, our significant others, our partners, we start treating them like normal. And we stop to be really grateful for them, and really supportive of them, and really caring and loving and understanding that man, I have things that are really good in my life. We start treating the same way about ourselves, our fears, our doubts, our happiness, and we start to just be like, okay, it's normal. We start normalizing the fear. We start normalizing the afraid, the unknown. We start being like, it is what it is. You know what I mean? We just start going like, that's the way my life is. I just got to suck it up and go through it. And we don't. We make it hard on ourselves to persevere or to say enough is enough. I don't want to feel like this anymore. And I'll do whatever it takes to change. I'll do whatever it takes to do what makes me happy. I'll do whatever it takes to start from the bottom, you know, and even if it sucks, even if I'm not good at it, I'm going to stick with it because this is what I want. This is what I want to do. This is who I want to be. And I'll continue to try, you know. And that's the important thing, is just trying. Is just one step at a time. And if you fail, there's always the next time to try again, you know. Because when it comes to this podcast, when it comes to videos, and I guess in general, like I could always compare myself to the biggest podcasts out there and be like, they're so far ahead of me, you know, or they have better material than I have. They have better guests on their show. They have celebrities and doctors and psychiatrists and people who really know what they're talking about. They have a lot more fans or followers, and like they have one episode of a podcast up, but that one podcast is better than all of my episodes combined. Does that make what I'm doing worthless? You know what I mean? Where's my worth? You know what I mean? I'm at the bottom, but I have something that they don't have, and that's like, I have 200 episodes of experience. It may not be better than what they're doing right now. I might be behind. I might not be in front of them, but they'll never be able to catch up to the hours that I have on this podcast. And that's valuable. No matter what, it's valuable. And it's valuable to me because I'm doing this for me. And because it's for me, who really cares? You know, I don't care. I don't care what somebody else is doing with their podcast. I think it's great. I think it's cool. I can do the same thing, but right now I'm focusing on building something for myself, something that I want. And so I'm afraid of like, maybe this podcast in the future will be something that I don't want, and that I'll have lost all of this time to it. But to tell myself the truth, to being real here, I guess I feel like I want something now instead of 10 years later or whatever. And the fact that I don't have what I want now is just like, maybe it's supposed to be this way. Maybe it's supposed to tell me that like, you're doing the right work, but you gotta put more into it. You gotta change it up. You gotta be something more. You have to make it something more. And that part is just that, like, realizing that the people who really want it, they try every single day and they fail every single day, and they maybe don't be what they want to be anymore, you know, but at least they're trying. Like, maybe I've said this before as well, but like, I don't go back to, what is it? Like, I guess the best example is like, I don't go back to like a big YouTuber's videos and kind of like criticize them for a video they put up 5 years ago or 3 years ago or 2 years ago, right? Like, I don't go back and be like, oh, this video sucks compared to your newest thing. It's like, who cares? He did that, so now his newest thing is the best, is the best thing. And he's doing that now. Like, you can't hate what that person's doing now, I mean, back then, because you missed it, right? Like, you missed your chance to jump on it, right? And what are you doing in comparison? And that's just kind of the feeling, is that like, of all of the time I could have spent posting or making a video or making a podcast episode or whatever, that was time that I guess I was trying to be like cool, or I was trying to be like, I don't know, I don't want people to think about me or to see me do nothing, or, like, I want this big quality, big production, big thing, and I want like a bunch of workers helping me out, and I want an editor, and I want all of this other stuff. I want people to like help me out and do all of this other stuff, and it's like, no, all you have is yourself. What can you do just you by yourself? Well, I have to edit my own videos, then edit your own videos. And then I have to record myself talking and doing nothing. Okay, then record yourself talking and doing nothing. Plenty of other people do it. Plenty of other people have embarrassed themselves online, and they're doing just fine now. What are you holding back? Why are you restricting yourself? You know what I mean? Fail. Fail today. Fail tomorrow. Fail the next day. Eventually, nobody's going to be able to, you know what I mean? Like, if you are upset about something that not upset, if you hate on something that I like on this episode today, 10 years from now, it's like, I don't even care that you hated on it. Like, I moved on to the next episode. I'm on episode 500 or whatever, right? Like, what do I care about what you said on episode 2? I think this is 255? What do I care about that? Why do I care what you said about episode 255? Does it matter to what I'm doing now? No. I'm still going, and I'm improving. So much of my feelings have been like, I want to be like quality, but you have to understand that like right now you don't have the quality, you don't have the resources to make quality. So now what can you do? Well, just try. Try with what you have and make the best of it. Because if you don't, you're never going to get started, and you're always going to. Now you're really afraid, and you're really scared of all the time that you lost, of all the things that you could have done with that time had you just started earlier. And that's the fear. That's the I'm afraid part. That's the stop holding back and just get started, and things will happen for you. Do you want things to happen for you? And that's when you have to kind of look at yourself and be like, do I want to start now? Do I want to start now? Are you afraid of starting, or are you afraid of losing time? And I'm definitely not afraid of starting. So I don't want to lose time anymore. I don't want to waste another day. I don't want to waste another minute, second, hour, whatever, doing something that isn't going to fulfill me the way I want to be fulfilled. I want to be something really, really good. And in order to be that, I have to get started and stop waiting and hoping that my circumstances were different, that I had what I see a lot of other people have, and just realize that like you can start from the ground up. And I kind of get inspired by those videos of like those you ever see those videos of those people that like they kind of build like a hut, or like they build like a cabin in the woods from scratch with like their bare hands and like just some tools. Like, that's inspiring. That's cool. Although some of those are fake. Like somebody did like a video of like, like it's like one of those, I don't know, like somebody out in like Thailand, or somebody in like, you know what I'm saying? Like they'll be out there in the woods, like living in the woods, and then they'll build like this whole like pool and like, or whatever, you know what I mean? And supposedly some of those are fake. Like there's like construction tire tracks on the ground, and people will be like, oh yeah, you built that by hand, you didn't use an excavator or whatever, you didn't use something to dig that out for you, like you did all that by hand. Yeah, right. Like, so that is not inspiring. But the people that really do it by hand, that really get down there in the dirt and they build something, you know what I mean? That's cool. That's inspiring. And that's the thing that anybody can do, right? No matter what, somebody can do that. So, then you just kind of overcomplicate it. You kind of say like, yeah, well, I need this machine to make this. Now I need like 50 men to help me build it. And it's like, no, you can do it yourself. You can do it yourself. So do it. Get started. Try. And if you fail, so what? You can delete the video. So what? You can, you know what I mean? Get rid of it. You can start over or try something new, right? Like, who cares? I don't think I'm ever going to regret this podcast. I don't think I'm ever going to look back and be like, man, I should delete that episode, or I should delete this whole podcast, You should just kind of say, this podcast is a part of my life, and I put a lot into it, and I don't want to give it up for anything. So, when you're afraid of losing time, just know that you can't regret. You don't have, it's like that Jonas Brothers song. It's like, we don't have time left to regret. You know what I mean? All that we can do now is look forward to tomorrow and what we can choose to do. What do you want to choose to do? What do you want? You can do it. I believe in you. I know you can. And I believe in myself to try. And if I fail, I fail. But statistics show people who continue, people with consistency, people who try on a day-to-day basis, they win. They tend to win. So that's where I think that's where I want to be. I want to be on that side of things. So, yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.